Here's a Will McLean CGI, and this is a CGI 5 Series 3 induced draft, and I'm doing a tune-up on it. Just watching the temperatures and the pressures right now. We're about 15. It's been holding steady, and over 130 degrees, so that's looking pretty good. It does have a bladder style tank, so this tank up here should have water up top, air in the bottom. If not, then that tank is bad and you're going to overpressurize. This is a secondary limit. Normally check those once those get up over 110 degrees maybe. So right now we do have a flame, and the way you check it is just we're going to turn that screw in the middle. Hold on, let me get my screwdriver. So once we get below 130, right around 130, this should shut the flame off. It's a little bit off, but yeah, 130 came back on. We're going to turn it back up. So it is the secondary limit. It does have a set point down here, set to 180, so that will shut the flame off once the boiler water, once the sensor senses 180 degrees, it'll shut the flame off. Pump in the back here will keep going, but the flame will shut off. So if this fails, this is a secondary limit. Will not allow it to go over 200. That will also is tied into the limit system. So it's in the safety system. So that would shut the flames off. So I'm going to pull these burners apart. I got to take a look at it first and see what's going on. These are not real easy to get out of here, but they'll walk you through it once I figure it out. Alright, a couple things I had to do here. Took this plate, was sitting on top of the burners. There was 3 screws. There was 1, 2, and then one was right back over the rollout. The rollout was here, so actually had to take the rollout switch out before I could get that screw out. Make sure you have the power switch off, because if you touch this to metal, you'll burn it out, or burn the transformer out. And then you have to take the gas apart. So you have to disconnect the gas, because I have to take these screws. There's 2 screws here, 2 screws on this side. I'm going to pull the whole gas manifold out so that I can get the burners out. The burners are a little bit dirty. I want to shake them out, clean them off. I also want to look up into the heat exchanger, make sure it's not sooting up or excessive corrosion or anything like that. So I will take a look at that. But I just wanted to show you what it takes to get this out. I'm not going to disconnect any wires. I'm just got to pull this whole gas train off and get it out of the way enough that I can slide those burners out. I think I can do that. What I'm using is just a little ratcheting wrench. This is 1/4 and 5/16. If you have one like this, or just like a open-end gear wrench or box-end gear wrench, that would work too, as long as you got 5/16. But it's super tight in there, so I can't even get a ratchet in there. It would have to be a wrench, so you'd have to use a wrench to get in there. Otherwise, I'm not real sure how they want you to get those burners out besides doing all this. Okay, we'll get at it. Okay, let's see what we can do here. I got these screws out, they're disconnected. So I'm gonna just try to pull that up out of the way. Slide the burners out. I gotta disconnect that too. Forgot to disconnect the pilot. Be careful with the 1/8 inch tubing. I break these all the time. Always replace them with 1/4 inch tubing. This 1/8 inch junk, can't stand it. Alright, so that loosens up my pilot assembly. This is unnecessary. Why they do that? Okay, so to get that out of the way, I'm gonna disconnect up here flame sensor. That and the spark is back here. Those are the that might be a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch spade. It doesn't want to come out. Of course not. Okay. Well, let's see here. Wow. It's in there pretty good. Let's see if I can get it out. Trying to pull it, there we go. Try to pull right on the head, not on the wires. You can yank those wires out. Okay. Alright, get this out of the way. I'm gonna get that pilot out. I'm just gonna take those screws off, hopefully, and let the pilot drop out. But here's the burners. We're gonna clean them up a little bit. There was some junk standing on top, but with all that shaking, getting it out, it knocked a bunch of it off. But there's a bunch of junk underneath there, so I really want to look up into the heat exchanger, see how that looks. And I'm just gonna stick my camera up there and look up, take some pictures. Ooh, yeah, we're gonna clean up this pilot assembly. Flame sensor is pretty dirty. We'll check the pilot orifice, make sure that's not all clogged up with junk too. And then I'll put it all back together. All right, be back in a minute. Okay, so we got back here, I got the pilot off. I took the plate off, it's just 2 screws. A little tip about these pilots and those screws. take them off every year, because if you ever have to replace this and those don't come off, you'll end up just stripping the screws out, or you have to buy a whole new assembly or something, because you won't be able to get at them. You have to drill the screws out. And don't put them in tight, just a little bit snug. It's not like this is going to go anywhere. So just barely put them in there. You know, snug them up a little bit by hand and should be good to go. We're going to clean this up with a brush. We'll brush this off. Don't use sandpaper. Most manufacturers don't recommend sandpaper anymore. Get used to using just some guys use like a green scouring pad, but I think that leaves residue, so then wipe it off with something, a rag or something. I use a brass brush. It doesn't seem to leave any residue or anything, and it's abrasive enough that it gets the junk off, but it doesn't scratch the metal either, because it's softer than the steel. And then just kind of brush these off. This is where it sparks from here to here, and so make sure you have good clean surface there. Scrub that pretty good so that spark can go to the right spot, and doesn't have to dance or find a different surface to spark to. The orifice is down inside there. You can see that tiny little hole. So we're going to pull this off, this nut on the bottom. Now this 1/8 inch tubing, again, it breaks really easy. So what we're going to do is don't try to twist the nut around the tubing. Just twist the tubing around with the nut. And oh, got it caught. And so I'm just going to try to spin the nut and the tubing together, and otherwise you're just going to end up breaking the fitting. So we're going to take it off like that. I got to get my wires unwrapped, but that's how I do it. Try not to, like the other end, that one's spin free, so we're good to go at this end. But the other end, normally that 1/8 inch inside the brass strips out, and then you no longer have a seal, and you'll end up replacing these heads. And again, if I replace the head, I'm replacing the tubing with 1/4 inch and new fittings. So, all right, I'm gonna get this off and clean that orifice out, but I can't do that with one hand. So here it goes. We got the tubing off. Look inside that. It's getting some junk inside that orifice. I'm going to try to clean that out. You want that orifice to pop out of here. So sometimes I've had to take a little screwdriver and try to pop it down real carefully. You want to be pretty gentle. That's not a real strong metal in there, but sometimes you can just reach inside here and push it down. Sometimes you can't. And there we go. It's gonna come out in a second here. There we go. There's our orifice. So that hole needs to be clean. You just clean the top off. It's still pretty clean, but notice the corrosion on here. If you don't take these out every year, then they're gonna get stuck in there and they'll never come out. So I'm gonna clean that junk out. Just kind of, if I can get my brush in there, or just gently scrape it with the screwdriver. I'm gonna brush up the sides of this to get some of that corrosion off, so that'll easily go in and out. Try to clean up in there a little bit too, normally with a screwdriver, I think. That's how I clean these pilot assemblies. And just don't forget to put this orifice back in, because the flame that comes out of that little hole is a whole lot smaller than if you have that thing wide open. But as soon as it turns on, you'll know the difference. Not that I speak from experience. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna put this back together. All right, I wanted to show you, this is all rust from up underneath the heat exchanger that fell down under the burners. It's a pretty big pile. It's a lot of rust and junk that fell down. That's all from the heat exchanger. And then I emptied these out, and all of this here was inside the burners. With these burners, they're double tube. Notice this tube inside here is thinner because there's an inner tube and an outer tube. The flame goes all the way to the back, works its way up this way. So I cleaned those out. I'm gonna clean all this up too. I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of junk in there. And then what I'll do is stick my camera in there. I don't know if I could, maybe I can see up in there. There's the heat exchanger. Yeah. Heat exchanger, and then that's a fiber heat shield around all 3 sides, 4 sides, because this one too. Even right there, fiber shield. That's for the heat, so it doesn't overheat. And then they got the insulation around the sides too. That's why you can have this so close to combustibles. I think it's a few inches on the sides and the back. So yeah, make sure you clean those out. This probably hadn't been cleaned out since it was installed. Even though it had a tune-up a few years ago, I doubt somebody went as far as to take these out and clean it. But it's important that you do it once in a while. Okay. I think that was about all for here. Exhaust fan, stainless steel, and sealed. Notice that RTV silicone on each joint. So those are silicone sealed high temp RTV, and that just goes out the sidewall, vents outside, not up the chimney because it's induced draft. So not going into the chimney anymore. I think the old boiler was out here, went into the chimney, and now just the water heater is going in the chimney. So hopefully they put a liner on it, because it should have a liner, because that's the only thing going in the chimney now. All right, I want to show you a couple of things about tools. I'm using a 1/4 inch extension bit, 6 inches long, and a little, it's about 3 inch with my 5/16 nut driver bit. And you kind of need it to get into the burner screw here, because that's just fits. You need about 10 inches. About 10 inches. So you need that, or some other way to get in there and unscrew that. So I found it's easiest to do it that way. And then to get this back on and take it off, on and off, you can use a stubby because you don't have much clearance here. But I recommend, if you don't have one of these, you need to have one of these. So this is just a 1/4 inch. It'll take any kind of 1/4 inch. It's just magnetic. It's not a chuck like this. But DeWalt I found is the best, the smallest profile. Milwaukee has the same, but it's really big and bulky, so it's hard to get into places. But I highly recommend. This is really nice. So I'm just gonna put this on. And I can go right in, get on that screw and screw it down. So you do have to hold the head up because it just spins freely. If I started, so that will spin around. So you have to hold up here somewhere on the body to keep it in place. But this is an amazing tool. It's a great tool. Got me out of a lot of hard spots. So I got all that back in. Pilot's hooked up again. And notice I didn't wrap it back around there, around the gas pipe. And everything's plugged back in. That pilot flame sensor and the spark cable. And I did not break the 1/8 inch tubing today. That's a plus. So I'm also hooked up here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let some water out of here until our pressure drops below 10. And then our fill valve right there, that fill valve should open up on its own and start letting water in. So that will show me if that gauge is working. It'll also show me if that's working also, the fill valve. And so I've just got my hose run over to a floor drain, and we'll just relieve some pressure, and that way I can test to make sure on the water side things are working. Okay, here goes my water test. We're at 13 psi maybe. I'm gonna open the valve, watch this drop, and listen for the water fill valve to open up. Draining. All right, I got below 10 and I can already hear it opening up. Don't want to drop the pressure too much, because I mean you're pulling water out of the system, and you don't want to be introducing air. But because you can introduce air if you bring it down to 0 and start and continue to drain, this vent will actually let air in, and it'll be like a vacuum breaker, so it'll let the water come out of it, and then you'll be introducing air into the system. So this is a reducing valve by Bell & Gossett, and these are very common around here. This is a fast fill. If I push that up, it manually opens to get the pressure in, or to open the valve, so you can actually put more pressure in if you want. So that's not really set very good. I might give it a little bit more. We're only at about 10. That's good. Right at 12. keep it at 12 because we have a bladder tank, and that's normally what they're set for from the factory. But I always test those when I install them. Make sure it's at the same temp or same pressure that you set the fill valve to. Very, very important. Right now we're going to start it up. And what will happen first, since we have an inducer, that inducer is going to come on first. This actually has a pressure switch. And a pressure switch that'll make it 1.12 inches water column. So those are connected to heat exchanger, the top of the heat exchanger box, and the exhaust fan. So that'll come on, pressure switch will make, the igniter will come on, the gas valve will open for the pilot. Once it senses the flame for the pilot, it'll let the main burners come on. And then also along with that exhaust fan, that pump comes on immediately, because you want to be able to just start pumping water right away. All right, that economy adjust on the bottom, that actually I think I read in the directions that can keep the pump from coming on. If you turn it down, it'll keep it from coming on right away, or something like that. Normally we just keep that at max economy adjust. Okay, we're gonna fire it up and get on out of here. Oh yeah, I'm also gonna run a carbon monoxide test. Just check to make sure there's no ambient carbon monoxide. Okay.